In previous videos, I have told various tales from the time of the Covenanters, a time when men, women, and even children endured persecution, suffering, and even death for their belief that only Jesus was the head of the church, and for being faithful to the national covenant, and a time of spiritual revival among many. For as a writer in 1839 put it, as the ministers who were forced out of their churches began to preach to large crowds outdoors, the whirlwind of persecution carried the seeds of salvation. Today, I want to share about another story. This one about a man who becomes more interesting the more I read about him. His name is John Brown, and he lived on a farm just outside Muirkirk called Priesthill. John Brown became friends with many of these banished ministers, becoming very well versed in biblical knowledge. Various sources say that if it were not for a speech impediment, he would have made a very good preacher. He was also known for his deep and moving prayers. Even during his lifetime, Brown was called the Christian carrier because from an early age he was renowned for his trustworthiness and integrity, and many of the local farmers would have him transport their goods for them. Two of the most famous preachers in the area, Richard Cameron and Alexander Peden, were his close friends. Alexander Peden, of whom I have made many previous videos about, is said to have told others that John Brown was a clear, shining light, the greatest Christian I have ever conversed with. While in hiding, Peden was able to perform the wedding of John and his second wife Isabel, pictured here, possibly pregnant, mourning John's death, and holding his daughter. It is told in several sources that the minister told Isabel that she was getting a very good man, but he also prophesied that she would lose him suddenly and soon. Even though Brown was not a preacher, he was renowned for his ability to teach young people. In fact, some writers call him an early Sunday school teacher. As many refused to attend the local church, which was now staffed with the government-appointed ministers called curates, many of the young people were becoming spiritually ignorant. Brown had a gift of explaining things well to young people, and so from miles around, youth would come to him, and he would instruct them in a sheep field in the summer and around a peat fire in the winter. Unfortunately for Brown and his family, the government knew that he was an associate of many outlaw preachers. Brown was also reported for not attending his local church regularly, which had become a law. On the morning of the 1st of May, 1685, Brown and his nephew went out to cut peat. Some soldiers, led by John Graham of Claverhouse, who were thought to be hunting Alexander Peden, who had visited the Browns recently, came upon the two men. Claverhouse began to question Brown about his lack of attendance at the local church and his known association with Covenanter leaders. He then asked Brown if he would pray for the king, a test often given to Covenanters. Brown answered that he did not attend the local church because he believed it was illegal for the government to force the minister on the people. He answered as well that God is the head of the church, and that he would be willing to pray for the salvation of the king, but he knew that King James was Catholic. Claverhouse told Brown to say his prayers, for he was to be killed for treason against the king. Brown began a long and moving prayer, praying for his fellow Covenanters, especially for his family that he was about to leave. 3 times Claverhouse interrupted the prayer, which was so moving that it was said that Claverhouse himself admitted it haunted him the rest of his life. Finally, Bloody Clavers, as he was called, had enough and ordered his men to shoot Brown in front of his wife and child. The soldiers, either moved by Brown's prayer or the fact that his wife was watching, refused or hesitated for too long, and Claverhouse took a pistol and shot Brown himself. Brown was buried where he fell, near his farm. Even by the standards of what was known as the killing time, this period when so many Covenanters were killed, this death was noted as especially cruel. In some versions, Claverhouse then asked Isabel Brown what she now thought of her husband. She is said to have replied, "I ever thought good of him, and now more than ever." And so that is some of the tale of John Brown, a man of integrity with a gift for teaching the young, whose main crime was resisting what he believed violated his conscience. For now, it is goodbye.